Florida wants to ban teens from using social media. On Wednesday, Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill into law banning children under 14 from using social media, making it the only ban for minors in the country.
You look at young kids and you know there's dangers out there. Unfortunately, we've got predators who prey on young kids. And it used to be, well, if they're out somewhere, maybe they're not being supervised, maybe some predator can strike. Now, with things like social media and all this, you can have a kid in the house, safe seemingly, and then you have predators that can get right in there into your own home. You could be doing everything right, but they know how to get and manipulate these different platforms. And so it's created huge problems.
The bill restricts children under 14 from having their own social media account and requires parental permission for 15 and 16-year-olds. The law will take effect next year and will also require social media companies to delete accounts held by teens under 15. So, Robbie, what do you think? Is this censorship?
So, interestingly enough, DeSantis vetoed an earlier version of the bill that was an outright ban for social media use for 16 and under. And he did say that goes way too far. He doesn't want to, that it goes too far in overruling parental rights. So in this case now, if you're between 14 and 16, the law says you can be on social media with your parents' permission. Under that, you can't use it. I guess I don't mind I support parents' rights, and I think they should have say over whether their children are on social media. I absolutely, utterly oppose an outright ban on really any age group using it, because what if the child wants to use social media and the parents say this child is responsible and can use social media, and now the government's going to say, no, we're forbidding this?
That's exactly what the government is saying.
What I believe in.
It's completely stripping away parental choice for anybody who has a child under 14 years of age. By the way, I don't completely understand how this is supposed to operate. Kids are very, okay, let me start at the beginning. Here's my first instinct with this. What is the role of parenting here? If I'm a parent without the law getting involved and I don't want my child to get a phone and to have social media, first of all, phones are the way that most people access social media.
Right,
they're not walking around with laptops. Kids don't even know how to type anymore. Who bought them the phone?
Right.
They're like over $1,000. Who purchased this child the phone? I did. Well, if I wanted to be able to contact them, pick them up from school, there are cheap, old-timey phones that you can buy that don't have smartphone technology on them. So at what point is this really just a performative?
As we all get so sick of having our attention sucked up by these things all the time.
Exactly. So I genuinely don't understand that aspect of it. Secondly, how can you prevent are they expecting teenagers to self-identify as, oh, I'm 14, and so the app won't download?
I think this gives just an ability to prosecute the social media company for allowing it, in which case they're going to have to require ID verification, which is something none of us want, because we don't want, as adults, you have to scan your driver's license to log onto a social media site. This is going down some Orwellian and dystopian era in terms of, well, what kind of, is it an adult social media sites? People don't want you to know I'm logged into this site or something verifying my information. So yes, I think it is a bad idea. And look, I absolutely accept and understand. I think we're still debating how bad and in what circumstances social media is bad or harmful for people in terms of their emotion and their anxiety. But I am completely willing to accept. I'm accepting of the fact that excessive social media use is harmful for people in general and can be harmful for children.
Sure.
Just the way excessive anything, frankly, can be harmful.
Sure.
Just, watching 20 hours of television every day will rot your brain.
I was just about 100%. To say, when we were growing up, it was all about the TV. My mother called it the idiot box, and our TV consumption was strictly limited.
My video game playing was strictly limited by my parents. I would have played video games all day if left to my own devices, but it was an hour on weekdays and more on the weekends.
This is how they did it. There was one TV in the house. It was in my parents' bedroom. There was no TV in the living room, etc. So if we were all home, my brother and I would try to get home early and get a half an hour in before our parents came home and try to remake the bed so they couldn't tell we were in there. But, and my father would come in and press it and see it's warm. I know you kids have been in here. But their parenting is what kept us from watching TV all day. I just don't understand why that isn't the go-to for parents today with these cell phones.
So I will say, so I've done debates before with Jonathan Haidt, who is a professor who is very well, he's perhaps the leading public advocate now for doing something about social media addiction, smartphones, et cetera. And we've argued about the subject many times. So I understand what his argument is. He would say it's too hard to limit social media access for kids absent a total ban, or he would say it's a collective action problem. And I don't agree with this, but this is his argument. Because even if you're a parent and you keep your kid from having the social media access and the phone, what this kid will find is that everyone else at school has phone access and social media access, so there is no one to talk to and engage with because everyone is so distracted all the time. So it's a collective action problem where everyone would rather not be like this, but need it taken away from them in order to restore normal sociability. That is what he says. That's his argument.
Well, that doesn't even fly, because for 14 to 16-year-olds, it's parental discretion. So there's still going to be a lot of kids whose parents are going to let them have social media. Moreover, this amorphous social media, this isn't a ban on using your text function.
Right.
You know, your video chat function. I mean, kids are communicating with each other through incredibly creative ways. I was watching a TikTok of a teenager explaining how she got around the parental guard locks on her phone by, instead of texting to her friends, they would open a shared notes app and then just write to each other back and forth paragraph style within a shared note. I didn't even know you could share notes. The kids will find a way, which makes me feel like this is always, look, it's not that the underlying concerns I think aren't legitimate in some instances, but these all seem to be an in-run around a more significant social problem about isolation. And by the way, some of those concerns about kids being isolated, depressed, suicidal, feeling comparisons with others or odious, all of those things on social media can also happen because of an absence of social media.
Yes, and the data is in fact mixed. Again, I wrote an entire book on this, Tech Panic. Everybody should get it if you're interested in this subject, where I looked at a lot of the available evidence, which actually showed that the most at risk of social problems or anxiety or depression was for the group of kids who used social media way too much and who didn't have any access to it at all.
Right.
There is a middle ground. And when we talk about social media use, you're right, because like, what do the kids do? In some circumstances, they're interacting socially with friends. They might be learning. They might be absorbing news content on a lot of these platforms.
TikTok videos?
Including that.
That's the real game.
Right. I mean, our show is available on some of these platforms. I want to tell young people that they're prohibited from seeing them. So it just doesn't seem... Now, again, I think if you're just spending all your time watching an infinite scroll on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or something, it can be bad for you. But that's just not beyond... That's not a legislative solution is not a good solution, because inevitably we don't want to really criminalize people doing that, and it wouldn't work. And it's not clear. Some people are better, like video games, again, are actually a good, positive thing for a lot of young men who don't make friends easily and feel socially isolated and alienated. The like depression effect for social media is, frankly, what we're talking about is teenage girls who are particularly, some of them ill-served by the filtering on Instagram or going into like body image issues, again, but which are nothing new and were promoted by magazines for decades.
Filters aren't even cool anymore. That's like so 2017.
Is that true? This is news to me.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. I look back at my old Instagram stories and I'm like, this is why I don't post anymore, because you're not allowed to use filters.
You're not allowed. I posted a story with a filter while you had your back turned. I did a selfie this morning.
Well, you are a millennial. That's some elder millennial stuff going on there.
But this issue is big right now, and frankly, there's a massive bipartisan consensus on doing more to regulate social media for a variety of reasons, for national security or for misinformation and harms to children is frankly one of the most bipartisan concerns of all. You remember that hearing from a few weeks ago where all of the senators, Republican and Democrat, just screamed at Mark Zuckerberg for some of what we were hearing there from DeSantis for allowing too many child predators onto the app, even though there is already exhaustive legislation that obligates the companies rightfully to take down abusive content, and they do. They report to the FBI all the time. And actually, Republicans have I agree with this, have expressed concern about how much contact there has been between law enforcement and the social media platforms in terms of the censorship case. So how much government do we want to invite into these apps? Have we thought through this at all? It seems totally inconsistent on some fronts.
They clearly haven't. And I do think that your point about how they enforce this and how that's going to implicate people who aren't the target demographic is really important. These things rarely stay narrow. And the data collection implications, I think, are really significant. Are we all going to be checking in with our IDs before we use these apps? Is it going to be like the instance that had the blowback over having to register your ID to look at adult videos? What are the broader implications for everyone else who is not expressly the target of this particular legislation? And are we going to look back and say that this was the beginning of the slide on the slippery slope?
And it always goes back to, at the end of the day, the First Amendment exists. And in a very similar situation, when California tried to restrict sales of violent video games to underage people, it went to the Supreme Court, and in a decision authored by the most furthest right member of the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia at the time, said this is clearly speech, and you can't restrict violent or uncomfortable speech, just like you couldn't pass a law that prohibited violent fairy tale books from being sold to kids. It's not fundamentally different. That's what they said about video games. And I have a feeling they might end up saying the same thing about social media if it ever got there.
Just do authoritarianism in your own house. They can put their phones in a bucket when you come in the door. I'm not a parent, but that feels very reasonable.
I'm about to institute that rule for myself when I'm at home in the evenings. More Rising right after this.